She didn't come to therapy because something happened, nothing dramatic, no big event, no single moment she could point to and say, "That's when it all started." She came because she couldn't stop thinking about everything that might have happened. Every conversation, every decision, every message she sent stayed in her mind long after it ended. Not just as a memory, but as something unfinished, replayed, slowed down, taken apart piece by piece. She would go back to a simple moment, something small, almost insignificant, and turn it into something heavy, something important, something that needed to be understood completely. English, she said, "I can't just experience something. I have to understand it completely, what it meant, why did it happen, what I should have done differently." And at first that sounds like awareness, like depth, like intelligence. But there was something else underneath it. Because the more she tried to understand, the more she got stuck. The more she thought, the less clear things felt. And instead of moving on, she stayed there, inside the same moment, again and again, like her mind refused to let it end. Part 1. When thinking never stops. Emma was 29, intelligent, thoughtful, the kind of person people would describe as self-aware. She noticed things others didn't, small details, subtle shifts in tone, the way someone paused before answering, the way a message was written. Her mind picked up everything, and processed it quickly, very quickly, which, in many ways, helped her. She was good at her job, good at understanding people, good at anticipating problems before they happen. From the outside, it looked like a strength, but internally, it felt very different, because thinking wasn't something she used when she needed it. It was something that happened to her, all the time, without asking, without stopping. Her mind didn't wait for a problem to solve. It created one, constantly scanning, constantly analyzing, constantly asking, "What does this mean?" And even when nothing was wrong, it didn't feel calm. It felt like something might be wrong, and that was enough to keep the process going. She described it like this: "It's like my brain doesn't trust anything at face value. Everything has to be checked, rechecked, and then checked again." A simple conversation was never just a conversation. It became a puzzle. A message from a friend was never just a message. It became something to decode. Even silence meant something. Maybe they were upset. Maybe she said something wrong. Maybe she missed something important. Her mind didn't leave space for uncertainty. It tried to fill it, immediately and completely. But the strange part was, no matter how much she thought, it never felt finished. There was always another angle, another possibility, another question waits behind the last one. And instead of bringing relief, thinking created pressure. Because if she stopped thinking, it felt irresponsible, like she was missing something, like she was ignoring a problem that needed attention. So she kept going, not because she wanted to, but because it felt necessary, automatic, like breathing, except instead of giving her life, it drained her. Slowly, quietly, over time, even during moments that were supposed to feel good, time with friends, a relaxed evening, a simple interaction, her mind was somewhere else, reviewing, replaying, reanalyzing. She wasn't just living her life, she was constantly thinking about her life. And the more she did that, the harder it became to just be in the moment, because every moment turned into something to figure out, instead of something to experience. Part 2. The loop that never closes. I asked her what usually happened after something simple, not something big, not something emotional, just a normal, everyday interaction, the kind people don't even remember later. A quick conversation with a colleague, a short reply to a message, a passing comment. She took a breath, looked down for a moment, then said, "It always starts the same way. At first, nothing feels wrong. The moment happens. She responds naturally. The other person responds. And that's it. It ends cleanly. Or at least it should end there. But for her, it doesn't. Because after some time passes, her mind quietly goes back. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a small shift in attention, like something gently pulling her back. And then it begins. What exactly did they mean when they said that? She replays the moment, exactly as it happened. The words, the tone, the timing. She slows it down, listens more carefully, look for something she might have missed the first time. Then another thought appears. Wait, was there something behind that? Now it's no longer just about what was said, it's about what might have been meant. And that changes everything, because now there are multiple possibilities. Maybe they were being genuine. Maybe they were being polite. Maybe they were hiding something. Maybe they were judging her, and each possibility opens a new direction, a new version of the same moment. So she goes through them, one by one, trying to feel which one is true, trying to figure it out. But the more she explores, the less certain she feels, because nothing confirms anything completely. There's always a gap, always a small piece missing, and her mind doesn't like that gap. It tries to close it, so it keeps going. Then the focus shifts from them to herself. Did I say something wrong? Was my tone off? Did I come across differently than I intended? Now she replays her own words, her own reactions, her own expressions. She edits them in her head, imagines better versions, stronger responses, safer responses, ones that couldn't be misunderstood. And for a brief second, that feels relieving, like, okay, that would have been better. But the relief doesn't last, because another thought follows immediately. But what if even that wouldn't have been enough? And just like that, she's back in it. Again, the same moment, the same questions, the same uncertainty, going in circles. And the strange part is, she's aware of it. She knows she's overthinking. She knows the moment is already over. She knows there's nothing she can change. But that doesn't stop it, because it doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like a process that started and now has to finish, except it never does. There's no final point, no clear conclusion, no moment where her mind says, okay, we're done here. Instead, it just slows down, fades out, only to return later. Sometimes the same day, sometimes days later, triggered by something small, a similar situation, a random memory, and suddenly, the loop starts again, like it was never really closed, just paused. Part 3. Why overthinking feels necessary. From the outside, overthinking looks like a problem, something unnecessary, something people are told to just stop. But from the inside, it doesn't feel that way at all. It feels important, almost essential, because when Emma was thinking, she didn't feel like she was wasting time. She felt like she was being careful, responsible, aware, like she was doing what she should be doing, paying attention, trying to understand, trying to avoid mistakes. And that's what made it so hard to let go, because overthinking didn't feel like the enemy. It felt like protection, a way to stay in control, a way to make sure nothing slipped through unnoticed. She believed something very simple, but very powerful. If I think about this enough, I'll figure it out. And once she figured it out, everything would settle. The doubt would disappear. The tension would go away. She would finally feel sure, certain, at peace with what happened. So every time her mind went back to a moment, it wasn't random. It had a purpose. To reach that point, to find that answer, to get that clarity. But here's where the pattern breaks, because thinking doesn't always lead to clarity, and especially in naturally unclear situations. Human interactions are complex. People don't always say exactly what they mean. Tone can be interpreted in different ways. Intentions aren't always visible, and meaning isn't always fixed. So when her mind tried to solve these moments, it was trying to solve something that didn't have a single stable answer. And that's why it kept going. Because every answer felt incomplete, temporary, replaceable. She might think, okay, they probably didn't mean anything by it. And for a moment, that feels okay. But then another thought appears. But what if they did, and I just didn't notice? And now the certainty is gone again. So she goes back, rechecks, reanalyzes, reconsiders. It's like trying to feel completely safe in something that is naturally uncertain. And the more she tried to eliminate that uncertainty, the more sensitive she became to it. The more she noticed small details, the more she questioned them, the more possibilities she created. And slowly, thinking stopped being helpful and started becoming endless. But the hardest part, it still felt necessary, because stopping didn't feel like freedom. It felt like a risk, like ignoring something important, like leaving something unresolved that might matter later. So even when it exhausted her, even when it drained her energy, even when it took her out of the present moment, she stayed in it. Because a part of her believed, this is how I stay safe. This is how I get things right. This is how I avoid regret. But in reality, it was doing the opposite. It wasn't protecting her. It was trapping her, keeping her inside moments that had already passed, and turning them into problems that never really needed to be solved. Part 4. A past where being right mattered. 1140 to 1540. To understand why her mind worked this way, we had to go back, not to a single moment, not to something obvious, but to a pattern, a way of growing up that slowly shaped how she related to the world. Emma described her childhood as good, stable, supportive. There was no major trauma, no dramatic story, but there was something subtle, something consistent, something that didn't feel like pressure at the time, but slowly became a rule she lived by. She was encouraged to be thoughtful, careful, precise, the kind of child who paid attention, who didn't act impulsively, who thought things through, and she was good at it. Teachers appreciated her, and adults trusted her. She learned early that being responsible, there was something people valued in her. Mistakes weren't punished harshly. No one yelled. No one made her feel unsafe. But mistakes were noticed, corrected, explained. If she got something wrong, someone would sit with her and go through it, step by step. What happened here? Why did you choose this answer? Let's think about how you could do it better next time. And again, on the surface, this sounds helpful, supportive even, but over time it created something deeper, a quiet expectation. Getting things right mattered, understanding mattered, thinking things through mattered, and slowly she internalized that idea, not as a rule someone told her directly, but as something she felt, something she believed, that if she just thought carefully enough, she could avoid mistakes, avoid discomfort, avoid being wrong. So she developed a habit, not consciously, not intentionally, but consistently. Think before acting, think while acting, think after acting, and if something didn't feel fully clear, keep thinking until it does, because clarity became the goal, and uncertainty felt like a problem. Even if no one told her that directly, her mind learned it. Quietly, gradually, over the years. And the more she relied on thinking, the more it became her default way of navigating life. Not just for big decisions, but for everything. Small interactions, casual conversations, simple moments. Everything passed through the same filter. Did I get it right? Did I understand this correctly? Is there something I missed? And if the answer wasn't clear, her mind didn't let it go. It stayed with it, worked on it, turned it over again and again until it felt resolved, or at least until she felt like she had done enough thinking. But as she got older, something changed. Life became less predictable, less structured, less clear, and suddenly the strategy that once helped her started working against her. Part 5. Why her mind never stopped searching. As an adult, Emma's environment changed, but her mental habits didn't. Her brain still treated uncertainty the same way it always had, as something to solve, something to fix, something to figure out. So when a situation felt unclear, her mind didn't relax, or it activated immediately, searching for answers, trying to make sense of it, trying to bring it to a clear conclusion. But here's the problem. Many situations in adult life don't have clear answers. They're open, ambiguous, unfinished. A text message without a clear tone. A conversation where meaning isn't explicit. Someone's reaction could be interpreted in multiple ways. Emotions that don't come with explanations. Intentions that aren't directly stated. These are normal parts of life. Most people experience them and move on. Not because they understand everything, but because they accept that not everything needs to be understood. But for Emma, that wasn't easy. Because her mind didn't see ambiguity as something neutral, it saw it as incomplete, unresolved. And unresolved meant keep thinking, so the process continued, relentlessly. Her brain searched for certainty in situations that didn't contain it. And the more it searched, the more it found possibilities. Not answers, possibilities. Maybe they meant this, or maybe that. Maybe it was nothing, or maybe it was something important. Each possibility felt real enough to deserve attention, so she gave it attention, one by one, until her mind was full of different versions of the same moment, and none of them felt final. This is what made it exhausting. Not just the thinking itself, but the lack of resolution. Because thinking usually feels productive when it leads somewhere, when it solves something, when it ends. But this kind of thinking didn't end. It stayed open, like a tab in a browser that never closed. And over time, those tabs multiplied. One conversation, then another, then another. All are still active, all still unresolved, all are still pulling her attention back, even when she was trying to focus on something else, even when she wanted to relax, even when nothing was actually happening in the present moment. Her mind was still working, still searching, still trying to complete something that couldn't be completed. And the hardest part was, it didn't feel like a choice. It felt automatic, like her brain was doing what it was designed to do: protect, anticipate, understand. But instead of creating safety, it created pressure. Instead of creating clarity, it created noise. And slowly, she started to realize something important. The problem wasn't that she wasn't thinking enough. It was that her mind didn't know when to stop. By part 6, the moment she realized thinking wasn't the solution, the shift didn't happen all at once. There was no dramatic breakthrough, no sudden realization that changed everything overnight. It started with a simple question, one that seemed almost too obvious. I asked her, when you think about something over and over, does it actually resolve your doubt? She paused, not because she didn't understand the question, but because she had never really asked herself that before. Her instinct was to say yes. Of course it helps. That's why she does it. But when she looked closer, really looked, something didn't add up. Because if thinking worked, she wouldn't still be stuck in the same loops. She wouldn't be revisiting the same conversations. She wouldn't be asking the same questions again and again. So she sat with it. I quietly, and for the first time, instead of following the thought, she observed it, watched it, without trying to fix it, without trying to answer it. And what she noticed was simple, but powerful. Thinking didn't bring closure. It extended the experience. It kept it alive. Every time she replayed something, she wasn't finishing it. She was restarting it. Every time she analyzed it, she wasn't resolving it. She was reopening it. And suddenly the pattern became clear. Her mind wasn't solving the problem. It was maintaining it, keeping it active, keeping it present, keeping it unfinished. That's why it felt endless, because it was being continuously fed by the very thing she believed would stop it, thinking. In that moment, something shifted, not completely, not permanently, but enough to create distance, and enough to see the pattern from the outside. And once you see a pattern clearly, you can't unsee it. She realized that the answer, there wasn't any more thinking. It wasn't a better analysis. It wasn't finding the perfect interpretation. It was something much simpler and much harder at the same time, letting the thought exist without following it to the end, because maybe not everything needed to be solved. Maybe some things could just remain open and still be okay. Part 7. Learning to let thoughts exist without following them. At this point, the goal wasn't to stop her thoughts, because that doesn't really work. The more you try to stop a thought, the more it pushes back, the more attention it demands. So instead, we focused on something different, her relationship with her thoughts, and not the thoughts themselves, but what she did when they appeared, because that was where the pattern lived. Before, every thought felt like a question that needed an answer, something unfinished that needed to be completed, something important required her attention. But now, we started to experiment with a different response. When a thought showed up, what did they mean? Did I say something wrong? Should I have done this differently? She didn't immediately engage with it. She didn't try to solve it, didn't try to analyze it, didn't try to reach clarity. She simply noticed it, and then did nothing. At first, this felt unnatural, almost uncomfortable, because her mind was used to action, used to responding, used to doing something with every thought. So when she didn't follow it, it felt incomplete, like leaving a sentence unfinished, like walking away in the middle of a conversation. Her brain would pull her back. Just think about it for a second. Just make sure everything is okay. Just check one more time. And sometimes she did. Sometimes she got pulled back in, and that was okay. Because this wasn't about being perfect. It was about noticing, catching the moment where the thought appeared, and realizing, I don't have to go with this. That small shift created space, a gap between the thought and her reaction. And in that space, something new became possible. She could let the thought exist without following it, like watching a car pass by without stepping into the road. It was still there, still visible, but not something she had to engage with. At first, the thoughts didn't go away. They still came, still repeated, and still tried to pull her in. But something had changed. She wasn't feeding them in the same way anymore. And slowly, very slowly, they began to lose intensity, lose urgency, lose that feeling of, this must be solved right now. Her mind didn't become empty. That was never the goal, but it became quieter, less crowded, less demanding. And for the first time in a long time, she could experience a moment without immediately stepping outside of it to analyze it. She could have a conversation and let it end, without reopening it later, without dissecting every detail, without trying to extract a perfect meaning from it. And that changed everything. Not because her life became perfect, but because her mind stopped turning every moment into a problem. Closing, 22:40 to 24:30. Months later, Emma said something simple, but it captured everything that had changed. My thoughts didn't disappear, but they don't control me anymore. And that's the difference, because the goal was never to eliminate thinking. Thinking is not the enemy. In many ways, it's what helped her navigate the world for so long. But at some point, what once felt helpful became overwhelming. What once felt like control became something that controlled her. Some people don't overthink because they are weak. They overthink because, at some point in their life, thinking felt like the safest way to navigate uncertainty, to avoid mistakes, to understand the world, to stay in control. And that made sense. It worked for a while. But healing doesn't come from thinking more. It doesn't come from finding the perfect answer to every question your mind creates. Because some questions don't have clear answers, and some experiences aren't meant to be fully understood. They're meant to be lived, felt, and then left as they are, unfinished. Not everything needs closure. Not every thought needs a conclusion. And clarity, real clarity, doesn't always come from analyzing something again and again. Sometimes it comes from stepping back, letting the moment be what it was, without adding anything to it, without trying to fix it, without trying to complete it, just allowing it to exist and then pass. Because in the end, peace isn't found in having all the answers. It's found in not needing them.